maybe in our humanity, we come for this. And this interaction, when we decide that we're going to start to heal ourselves so that we can be ourselves more fully in the
Yeah.
world,
Mm-hmm.
all of a sudden life gets very exciting and all
Yeah.
sorts of things happen. You start having new awareness, of who you are. And then you'll start to be like, oh, I need to be true to myself. And I'm being my most authentic self right now today. And then you'll walk a little further down that path and you'll start to see other ways where you have deferred your power, you've kept your mouth shut, and you're not showing up authentically. So it is really these layers, this
Mm-hmm.
unlayering, right? And these realities that come up in our body for us to see, that come alive. We're like, oh, I haven't been authentic in that way. It's like a new challenge,
Right.
right? For us. And it is either challenge accepted or not. And either is okay.
Everything. I'm so thrilled to be back with you guys. And in our first couple of episodes that we spoke about trauma, I mean, we really dove into many different topics and like real like scenarios and experiences that we've had. And I appreciated it because it wasn't orchestrated. We just allowed our conversation to flow. And in our last episode, we talked a lot about inner child and vulnerability. And, that was really the crux of what we spoke about. And today, I really want to explore actually the three of us sharing what's going on in our healing journeys and the idea that the healing journey is like a one and done. I'm going to go to retreat and I'm going to get healed, and that fallacy. And then I also wanted to explore some healing modalities. How does one, once they've identified trauma, and Jude, you actually said in our last episode, people think about trauma many times, or it could have been you, Tara, actually, that I know it was Jude, like a car crash, or someone had passed, or a traumatic experience. And I know we lean more into the trauma that has been embedded from childhood, and so I like to explore, is there a difference between those two? And then, how we approach it and face it. And then I just want to like allow it just to flow from that point on. But before we get started, I wanted to share some things that I came across. We all know that a big giant within the trauma world is Gabor Mate. And I appreciate his definitions, and I know it's not the only one, but he shares that the word trauma has Greek origins and means wound. And he also explains that it's a psychic wound that leaves a scar. It leaves an imprint in your nervous system, in your body, in your psyche, and then shows up in multiple ways that are not helpful to you later on. And so, as we speak about healing modalities and how to treat trauma, I know we talked a lot about the nervous system, but what we didn't touch on was regulating our nervous system. So I'd like to explore that as well. So we'll first kick off with what's going on with you guys and share some things that are happening in your own healing experience to share with our listeners. Tara, you want to kick us off?
Sure. It is a journey. It really is. And one of the things that I came up with, it was just a mantra, something that I was repeating to myself on a regular basis when I was very young, going through a lot of chronic pain and difficulty and not understanding where it was coming from, was appreciate the process. And so that's been my slogan. Like actually my girlfriend now has a cup with it on there and everything. We always just say appreciate the process, because it's more than trusting the process. It's actually appreciating it. Like, how do we have gratitude for it? Because it is something that we get to experience. And that gratitude idea really comes from this place of like accepting it, but then also being grateful for it coming, so that it actually, you can see that it's giving you something as well. that
Mm,
there's something to be grateful for. There's a gift inside of it. And
yes.
so the process, the journey, whatever you want to call it, actually everybody has the kind of their own term for it. I've noticed that in my clinic, people always call it something. But for me, appreciating it is as a gift, as being
Mm,
able to appreciate this ever often coming, it's like often repeating itself. And if I can show up to it and see it for what it is, then I can go, oh, I can appreciate this. So in this now
mm,
moment, I am experiencing a lot of unfolding and a lot of reflection. There's a lot of things that have happened in the last few years that I'm now circling back to, going, wow, I didn't recognize how far I've come. Because when you're in it, it is really, really difficult to see. And I am trying trying really hard right now to hold space for how much work I've actually done and all the divergent paths that it's put me on and all the different timelines it's put me on and all the different people it put me in front of, and really reflecting back and going, whoa, what a gift. Okay, I'm getting tingles now.
mhm,
So,
mhm,
and tuning into that, right? Oh, whoa, what a gift that this whole unfolding has happened to develop me in this now moment, in the person that I am. I could not have seen that going in the midst of it, going through it. It's really hard to see in this perspective when I'm actually feeling it again, because that activation of the nervous system does kind of pull us back into that base brain, that primal sense of feeling. What right now I'm trying to put understanding to it.
mm,
Oh, there is more perspective to be had. And
yeah.
so it is really, really, and it can be very intense because it does feel overwhelming at times to acknowledge how much you have gone through. Whoa,
Mm,
that's a lot for one human being. And I'm not even, I'm just going to be turning 44 in December. So I'm not even like through yet, right? I'm like, oh, this is like midway journey. Oh, this is the mid journey. What else do I get to experience with all the wisdom that I've gained at
mm,
this point? So a lot of reflection with the people that I have now cultivated as the community that I choose to belong to. My chosen family is what I call them. I've also healed a lot of wounds and stuff between my family members. So my mother wound is am seeing with my daughter, and my relationship to my mom is really flourishing now because I've come to this place of acceptance and appreciation instead of just feeling frustrated and irritated all the time. I've come through that.
yeah.
And my relationship to my father also has been really, really beautiful. It's blossoming now, and there's relationship happening to all of these people in my lives because I have this new perspective of appreciating the process that I've gone through to bring me to where I'm at. So
Mm,
that's where I'm at with a lot of the things. The particulars of it, my relationship with my husband, it's getting richer and deeper as well. There is a lot of turbulence within our intimate relationships, though, and most of us can see that. But I think that if we acknowledge these as opportunities to grow instead of resisting, because my ego definitely wants to hold on to that. Like, I don't know if I want to be, in this mix, or I don't know if I want to do this or whatever. And she's wanting to take me all of these different mental constructs, all of these different places, and judging and judging and judging. Oh, but what if I just stop, breathe, pause for a moment, and recognize that I can actually just sit in this moment without a judgment and calm my nervous system down. I
yeah.
didn't have that tool before, but these are the practices that we will be implementing now.
Yeah.
So I'm happy to be experiencing these and talking about them at the same time.
That's beautiful. I mean, you really did lend to the adage that we hear a lot is that, the only way out of trauma is through it.
Yes, absolutely.
And so, what a beautiful depiction of what you experienced in it, and then having gratitude in it. Right. And I too have experienced that myself. And especially with the idea of these master teachers in my life.
Mm,
Right. And I look at it, from a parenting perspective. Parenting really was a huge teacher for me. Dis-ease in my body, right? Huge, huge master teacher. Family, of course, religion, and then relationships. And as I looked through them, I had the villains already pegged, and right, I had all the receipts. I have proof. I can show
Evidence.
y'all. I have my
Yeah.
stories pat down, and it was like, come to my defense,
Mhm.
please, somebody,
Yeah.
feel sorry for me, But really, I just wanted to be
Ooh.
seen. And now, as I look at those master teachers and the adage that, or the not the adage, my truth is that was all ordered for me.
Mm.
And so I look back now with that gratitude that you talk about. And these master teachers, I always feel it. So I'm not going to apologize because I've come to accept this beautiful being that I am.
Yeah.
I'm not going to hide it.
Mm.
But I look at those master teachers with such a different lens of gratitude and appreciation.
Yeah.
We may not have relationship in this time and space at this moment, but I've gotten complete with each one of them. It is just an amazing feeling.
Mm.
And and you talked about how far you've come. And that's why I wanted to talk about where healing isn't necessarily like on July 7th, I was healed,
Yeah.
It's those moments where you're like, who said that? I mean, in a
Mhm.
situation where I would never have shown up that way, or I address a situation completely differently. And then in hindsight, you said, who was that? Wow, healing. And so I just want to encourage the listeners and the watchers that it is the most invigorating, kind of treacherous, yet important and critical journey that a brave soul can take to get to that point that Jude has taught me about finding home. And
Mhm.
so I've used that as my guide because we had so many conversations about it. And I would step into Jude's world and she would always describe these things, and it's not my language, but I was always fascinated by it. And now that I'm clearing ways of my own, I'm getting to connect with how she expresses herself in those ways and going, wow, this is so cool. So the journey, there isn't an end place, and so it's been absolutely amazing. And yeah, it's just I can find those things that I put so much precedent on and were so important just fall away. And my measuring sticks of that I was healed, I still had the old lens of, well, if I'm healed, it's going to show up in my looks. It's going to show up in what I have, my possessions, how much money I'm making. So old paradigms with, a new Joseph don't make any sense at all. So I look at the rich life that I'm living, and ain't nobody gonna take that away. Mm-mm.
That's right.
So with that,
Yours.
this in the first 5 minutes,
Love love it, love it.
right?
Yes, let it flow, let it flow.
Yeah.
I know. I'm like loving it, all of it,
Yes.
and just sitting in the juiciness of both of you. Um, okay, so a memory came to me as Joe was sharing when I was 20, and this all connects, so please be patient with me. When I
Mhm.
was 20, and that I'm 55, I wrote a poem called Freed because I knew I was really fearful and bound up. I just didn't know why. And so I wrote this poem, and some wisdom had really been downloaded and dropped into me about concentric circles and the ripples and life. And if you take that, and often in healing communities, we'll talk about peeling the layers of the onion. So think circle, right? And if you take that and pull it out, it's a spiral.
Mhm.
And so really for me, healing is what my friend Michelle Frank calls a spiral of growth. And when I heard her say it, it was like this huge aha because we're all on our own spiral of growth. It's a lifelong journey. And each time around, we are often learning the same lessons, but from a different perspective. We kind of level up
Yeah.
and we gain perspective. We see with
Yeah.
a different bird's eye view. And each time, like Joe and Tara are talking about, we begin to reconnect or connect with life in new ways because trauma, and I want to say it's Dr. Peter Levine talks about this, how trauma interrupts connection with self, connection with life, connection with others. And so what I have found, especially in the last 2 years, that for me has been where all these 30 years plus of work has led me, is like, it's about connection and establishing connection, bringing connection online in my body. And so it's these little connections that we're healing each time around, and we get to know ourselves, and then we get to show up in a different way. We begin to interact with life in a different way. And so in a way, I've been healed a bazillion times and yet
Right.
I remain unhealed. Right. It is this lifelong experience maybe in our humanity. We come for this, and this interaction, when we decide that we're going to start to heal ourselves so that we can be ourselves more fully in the world, all of a sudden life gets very exciting and all sorts of things happen. You start having new awareness, of who you are. And then you'll start to be like, oh, I need to be true to myself, and I'm being my most authentic self right now today. And then you'll walk a little further down that path, and you'll start to see other ways where you have deferred your power, you've kept your mouth shut, and you're not showing up authentically. So it is really these layers, this unlayering, right? And these realities that come up in our body for us to see, that come alive. We're like, oh, I haven't been authentic in that way. It's like a new challenge, right? For us. And it is either challenge accepted or not. And either is okay. Right. We do what we need to do, what's best for us in the moment. Because we're all trying to survive, but really, gosh darn if I'm not thriving. And I never thought I would, right? I never thought I would, but I am. And my nervous system, it just doesn't get dysregulated very much anymore. It's like I have brought things back online. And like I said, I've been working at it for 30 years. I didn't even know what I was working at until 2019, as far as my own personal trauma, right? So, but it does give hope, right? If after all this time, and that makes me emotional, could be in a place where my nervous system is fairly regulated. When it does get dysregulated, I have my toolbox. And that's one of the things I encourage people. You get a toolbox and you get a support system in place. Toolbox and support system. And everyone's toolbox is going to be uniquely theirs, because we are each really unique. And what resonates or works with us, there's some things we probably all have. We probably all have some breath work in there.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Right. But then I have essential oils in mine, and maybe Tara doesn't. Right. So we all have some different things in our toolbox, and that's beautiful. But figure out what your toolbox is, keep it, because then when you get dysregulated and it's emergency, you can just pull out your toolbox, call up your support friend, right? And move through it. And process and integrate. And I love what Tara's saying about appreciate the process. There was so much richness. You said a couple other things, and I was like that, and now they're gone in this moment. But they're out there for everybody else. They already heard it and integrated it. So I'm hopefully, but it's this beautiful process. And when you start to begin to appreciate it, I think you really are starting to step into your freedom. And really start like this very dynamic relationship with yourself and with life that can only begin to make your relationships with others more rich.
Yes.
So I am so excited about what's happening in my life. And because of where I'm at, like I'm actually beginning to move in service in a way that I never thought I would. And I'm super fired up. So
that's awesome. Yay. Well, here's the funny thing, because Jude, the universe brought us, we already contracted, okay, our souls. It's like, okay, you two are gonna come together during this really critical part of both of our lives. Remember, we were parallel in so many ways.
Mhm.
And when you move from the East Coast to the West Coast, and if you remember the Washington, never mind, we don't have to go there. What happened up there? My goodness, it's just heartwarming to me because you allowed me kind of front seat on your
Oh
journey.
yeah.
And I'm just amazed at what you did, like leaving South Carolina, like selling your beautiful, like gorgeous mansion. It was beautiful. And getting in a freaking car with crazy Kimberly and like going across, the country. And you were just so determined, right? Got to
Mhm.
Washington, had all that drama, and then go to Korea, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And for 3 months and to a foreign country, you've been there before,
yeah,
yet you just immersed yourself in it and you learned what you were supposed to learn.
yeah.
You came back, surrendered, came to San Diego, where now you found the love of your life.
It's
And
true.
and then you really started to for me, it was a beautiful to witness because then you and I, because just of life, right? Not we didn't separate per se, but we started to go in a path where we needed to go through. And it's just it's special for me because you're one of the most dearest people in my life.
Mm.
I mean that. So anyhow, the spiral of growth is just the way that you have explained it, the concentric circles, and then kind of taking the middle and like pulling it up, right? You start to see that it's kind of like maybe like a spiral staircase per se, where if you go around, you're in the same spot, but you're elevated a little bit more, right? And you keep going back, same shit and again, and there's like, but there are different perspectives that you're looking at, and when you get to the top and look down, the things that were so critical for you at the very bottom are like this tiny, right? And this evolution through it just gives you permission to say, this is the journey for me. I'm turning 60 in 3 weeks, right? I know I look 40. No, I'm kidding.
You
No,
do.
I said 42
Wow. Oh my
last episode.
gosh.
And I think, well, it did not take 59 years for me to like, it's okay. The judgment against healing is like, oh my gosh, why? Is because I am letting down the comparison muscle that tends to come up.
Yeah.
I look at
Mhm.
someone who is successful and all that, and then they're speaking to that happened a long time ago. It's enough already. You're
Mm.
living in the past, and it's like, wait a second. I think that's what my religious experience was, which I've somewhat not the religion part of it, but the remnants of faith I've
Mhm.
rediscovered in a whole new way. But anyhow, it was like it just kept me at bay. It never hit the core, important pieces inside of me. And I think that this is the journeys that we have experienced have gone to those places. So I'm encouraging men. It doesn't mean that you are less than to go through this process. It actually strengthens you. And I will
Mhm.
tell you that majority of my healing experience has been in the divine feminine. It is yielding, empathy, it is compassion, it's waiting, those types of things. What had shifted was the masculine side that I experienced starting last summer, I would say, which is taking the action, right? And moving towards those areas of completion, like I mentioned, and that's been the one of the biggest places of healing for me is relationships and like places where I had good intentions, yet I saw myself and um, I had to reconcile and restore relationships because people trusted me and I didn't come through. And it wasn't shame, it was just acknowledging, wow, I saw this about myself and I just want to be complete with you. So those conversations still happen. And the more that they happen, you guys, it's like I liken it to like a tube, like a paste or something where I can't flow if there's shit that's stuck in there. Those are the places I want to complete.
Mm.
And it's unexpressed communication, right?
Mhm.
Something that I want to say that really needs to be said. And it's a gift I'm finding. Even back to my corporate days, I called one of my managers and we got on Zoom. I haven't seen her for like 6, 7 years. And I said, I just want to get complete and say thank you. The last year I was at that company, um, she was my senior manager who reported to me. She ran that team and made me look really, really good. I got the accolades. I got the big bonus. She got one, but
Yeah.
I didn't thank her. There were a few things. I was so sick that we were on calls and I just defaulted to her and said, can you take this? And without, getting complete. And she said, thank you. That was a gift. Unexpressed communication. Doesn't always have to be, I did this, but yeah. All right. We're getting off to a great start. Thanks, you guys. Yeah.
One thing I didn't say about the spiral of growth,
Mhm.
maybe it's a spiral of life because we're all on it, right? And the beautiful thing about that, it exists outside of all the systems and constructs of
Oh,
the world. And in the spiral of growth, we are all equal.
mm,
We all come there
right on.
as who we are, and we're all equal in that work and in that place. And that really is our truth. And then one thing I want to say, just kind of off topic, but on topic, because if I don't say it now, I might forget, is that September is Suicide Awareness Month, and people who have trauma are more likely to commit suicide or have suicidal ideation.
Mm,
So I did a little quick research before hopping on. 77% of men and 76% of women will experience trauma in their life of some form. And 16% of men and 11% of women will have suicidal ideation or maybe or attempt suicide. I was reading through the study pretty quickly. So, and then for my group of trauma adoptees, I know that this is the fact that 25% of adoptees compared to biological kept children will commit suicide. They have a 25% higher rate of suicide.
Wow.
So,
wow.
trauma, it can have far-reaching implications and effects in our lives. And that's why it's so important to get support and get that toolbox in place.
Yeah.
And so because of the month it is, I really wanted to bring that point home. It's important to understand just how much it can affect a person. And often everyone in their life might not even know they carry it silently very often for really long periods of time.
I think that's key
So,
right there. People don't know that they're carrying it silently,
yeah.
right? They don't see their issues or
Yeah.
circumstances are tied to trauma, right? So
Right.
what we're
Right.
sharing is important. Yeah.
Yeah, because usually people keep it inside, right? We feel like there's that mask, that face we have to put on to fit
Mm,
in,
yes.
right? And show up, right? We got to show up, go on for the show, and people are really doing their best. And I think in the first episode I was talking about the walking wounded, right? Like everybody, that's really high numbers, and I have a feeling it probably is even higher. And so people are walking around wounded and they're doing their best. And so, hey, if you're listening, generously pour love into yourself today and into others because you're doing your best and so are they.
Love
Mm,
that.
awesome.
Thank you for that
Yeah.
awareness.
Yes. Yeah. Really, really important. So, which is a great bridge over to what I wanted to speak about, which is the healing process. And I appreciate what you said about your toolbox, right? One of the things that came through on the first two episodes of this ongoing series, it was the nervous system, right, and regulating that. So I want to turn it over to you guys and to share the nervous system, how critical it is to be in tune with the nervous system, and ways in which to regulate the nervous system. So Tara, you want to kick us off?
Sure. There are a whole host of ways to regulate the nervous system. So just a brief recap on nervous system and how it becomes activated in traumatic or kind of repatterning of that spiral that we're on, right? Like when we start to notice that there's another event that re-triggers something that probably is deeper buried or somewhere in there. And I loved you that you're wearing the spiral actually on your neck. I think that's a good reminder that we're on this spiral journey. Is filling up, I call it the toy box, but it is, I think it's the toolbox before it becomes the toy box. So eventually over time, it becomes a toy box and we get to play. But at the first, it really is a toolbox because I tell my patients all the time, I'm not going to BS you. It's freaking work. It's work because you have to face the pain and you have to feel into sensations that are incredibly uncomfortable. And you might not even acknowledge that they were there because your nervous system and your mental capacity to handle it all can be so overwhelming that you block yourself from it. So the nervous system is actually a protective mechanism. We're supposed to actually have activation in the nervous system for a healthy activation when we're under threat. So let's just say like back in the day, ancestral or a base brain where we have evolved these things, we have triggers that would happen. Let's say, a tiger would come out and we would have to run. Animals in the wild actually will encounter a traumatic event. And if they survive that event, they can go and hide and tremble for days as a deactivation of the nervous system. So we've lost those tools over time. And we've basically said it's kind of shameful to have too much outburst of emotion and those kinds of things. But what we really want to do is kind of give appreciation to the nervous system and the responses. So the responses are the ones that we know of so far: fight, flight, freeze, fawn. And those manifest in different ways for different people, depending on how we adapted them as children or through the traumatic event that had happened to us at any point in time in life. So we have different ways to adapt. There's different adaptive strategies. So sometimes it can look like people pleasing. Sometimes it can look like outbursts and rage. Sometimes it can look like running away from a scenario. Sometimes it looks like freezing and being quiet and not being seen at all, or just shutting down completely, So a lot of the things we don't necessarily recognize might be happening. And what's really interesting is we can stay functional in our lives and still be manifesting these things. So it's really interesting to me that we can somehow still participate in our lives, kind of almost in this zombie state of nervous system activation, but not actually know that we're encountering it on a regular basis. It was second to second for me. I was like, all these flustering kind of feelings would just continue to come over me. And I was like, well, I got to go get my stuff done. I got to go do the things, So I would try to just continue to shut it down, and not actually meet it for what it was. So the toolbox or the toy box, as it becomes on the journey spiral, I actually like the spiral metaphor, because on the spiral at the base is probably the heaviest, the biggest, the longest journey around until we spiral up into the point of completion, right? And when you said it's almost like this outside of everything that we've kind of been dealing with, that makes so much sense to me, because the tension that I hold is we are already whole and healed. And if that's outside of the paradigm that we're continually living in, and the paradigm that we live in is re-traumatizing us, how do we kind of do that? What is it for you, Joe? How did you see it?
Yeah, exactly the same. It's like, it's that idea of the adage of being in the world and not of it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So it is, because I've been getting a lot of downloads, uploads, sideloads, that as, in this third dimensional, I get tugged in back and forth, but as I am, have devotion now to, it's just shifting everything. And I am naturally wanting to let those things just fall to the wayside, because I don't, whether it be energetically, they just don't align any longer. It just opens this portal now for connection. And it is, I can find, and it is social media, to be honest with you. And I was so happy every Sunday at 9/11, I don't know why at 9/11, but my screen, how many hours you've been on, and it went down 3 hours this week. And I was just like, I'm just really happy right now. And just those little markers along the way right? To show that though I'm in this third dimensional realm, I don't curse it, don't, I don't have to, I can just observe it happening.
Yeah.
Because,
That
you
that
know,
is
right? And then and it's no longer now I'm up here, I'm
mhm.
here, and these third dimensional humans. I thought like that's just religion again,
Oh, yeah.
right? And so it's just running. It's like it's okay. They are where they are, and just like Neo knew exactly where he was in there, or he finally came to the realization. Of course,
That's
we
right.
get to experience the same thing.
Yeah.
So I love how you brought it outside, though. The spiral to see, that how we are so attached
Mhm.
to this world that we were born into, conditioned, programmed, and then now we're working through it. So anyhow, long-winded answer, but yeah.
No, and I think that's great. I think that that's the thing. The thing that you just said that resonates so deeply for me is being the objective observer.
Mhm.
So being in the world, but not of it, right? Like
Right.
exactly what you're saying. And like it is really hard with social media because of the algorithms and the way that pulls our attention. We've spoken to this before, but that which is your attention, your intention, is the same in Chinese medicine. And
Mm.
your your energy follows your intention, your attention, and we're literally giving it to this. What happens when we take our energy back? We become the objective observer of ourselves and the world that we're in. Not that we're just above it, but we're also in it and hold
Mhm.
space for that observation to be had. No judgment, just being in the now. Take that breath, feel into it. Oh, this is all, we're a part of all of this. We chose this. So
Yeah.
be into it, feel into it. And then also, I think a really, really big part of what I wanted to speak to, what you were saying earlier, was actually feeling into the divine feminine has been a journey for me, particularly because I've felt so much shame for feeling, for having feelings, for having big emotions, for being very intensely drawn to this body that I have, and
Mhm.
having to objectify myself and be objectified and present myself in a particular way to be seen. And the culture that I grew up in is, it's male dominant. And it was very like, how dare you feel that way? You're so emotional. Shame, shame, shame for being this way. And
Yeah.
so I shut it down for a very long time. I wanted to be a man. Like I wanted to be a boy for a really long time because I was so confused about having all of these feelings. What I would love to do, and this is actually very prevalent in my relationship right now, is how do we hold the divine masculine and the divine feminine, all of the emotionality that comes from both, and actually hold reverence for the emotions to move them through so that we don't feel stuck in these patterns anymore of like not feeling like we can express, not feeling like we can move them out into the ether and process them, but actually hold space for them, objectively observe them, and go, there they are. No judgment. Hi, I see you. Whoosh. You
Yeah.
know,
Mhm. I
that's
love
where I'm at right now with all
that.
that. It's been a process. It's definitely hard. And the ego wants to get involved and
Oh, for
say all of it.
Yeah. No, thank you,
Yeah.
Tara, for capitalizing the nervous system and
Mhm.
responses to things and why it's there. Jude, you were talking about Toolbox. What are some of
Yeah.
the tools within your box?
Let's see. Some of the tools within my box are EFT tapping, so you can go to a practitioner and you can do it yourself. So if I'm in the moment, right, and something comes alive in me, activated my body, it starts to feel shaky inside, my breath, my throat's tightening, then I will do tapping for myself, right? Because I've done it enough with my practitioner that I know where to go. And I know for me that this is where I need to tap,
Mm,
usually right
mm,
here.
interesting.
So I can just do this anywhere and I feel calmer, right? So I love it because it's simple. The tools are my hands and I
Mm,
can do it. And you do it for a few minutes and it's very calming to the nervous system. Uh, when I was a massage student and a massage therapist, shaking, right? Tara talked about that the body used to tremble and shake to release the trauma. We don't do it anymore. So just even kind of just moving your body and shaking, get some movement to release.
Yes.
Singing can calm the vagal nerve runs here, so they think that singing is a way that we can calm
Really?
ourselves.
Wow. Jude
Essential
has such a good
oils.
voice. She's so shy. Never mind.
Oh,
You know, that was part of my trauma. Like they used to say I was shy, and now I look back and I'm like, I was withdrawn. Like I was more than shy. I couldn't talk, and here I am, can't shut me up. Um, yeah, so I have a breath work, meditation, yoga. Any of these things can be in our toolbox, getting out in nature. My new meditation is photography, and I just let nature and life speak to me. And so for me, I could just go, you know what, I just need to get outside and walk. So there can be all sorts of things in our toolbox. For some people, it's art. Art can be a great tool.
yeah.
So that's why I said everybody's toolbox is a little different. And when we are activated, as with everything, it can be on a spectrum, right? There could be tiny activations. And so what you might do for a tiny activation is call the support PAL, or drop, or right. So, or, the essential oils. And then a larger activation might be the tapping, right? And the call therapist. We can have all sorts of somatic practitioners. We can acupuncture. I've done all the things, shamanic work, like I've done it all. And that's how you find what works for you and what resonates and what lights you up. Because like I loved how Tara said eventually it becomes the play box, because eventually these are things like photography, walks in nature, are things that I really enjoy. My little girl wants to go out and play. Right. I want to play. I want to enjoy this life. That's what we're here for. Some of the things that have really helped me, I love that you guys were talking about being the observer. And I know that whether Tara uses this language, she does this with her patients, is she witnesses them in their wholeness. And having someone that can witness you in your wholeness seems to amplify and speed up the process. Right. And so it's really a beautiful thing. And when you can begin to take those reins and witness yourself in your wholeness, it's like a game changer. Right. So having that support pal is what I call it, but having that person in your life that can reflect and mirror back to you. And it might be a practitioner, like Tara, or someone like me, or someone like Joe, that does that for you. They hold you in your wholeness. They see you that way, and they're able to, even as you grow, like Joe was cheering me on in the beginning, right? Because they witness that. And sometimes you might not even catch the growth, and then have somebody cheer you on. Then you can cheer yourself on and be like, Tara said, like, oh my gosh, I've come this far. And so I'm gonna put some language out there that's really helped me, and I use it in my work, is trauma-bound identity. And earthbound identity. So we talk about going from disconnection, and again, everything's a spectrum. Depending on your trauma, you have a certain level of disconnection in your life, to yourself, life, others, right? For some people, like me, I lived in a disassociated state for much of my life because my disconnection was so great. So there's like this big buffering between me and life, people, right? And I couldn't really feel things. And yet I was super raw and crying and sensitive all the time. I really appreciated how you shared about that. Had very similar experiences, and, was told I was too sensitive. But I look back now and I'm like, well, of course I was raw. And, so in that disconnection, we are also fear anchored. So we're moving from disconnection to connection, and from being fear anchored into our earthbound, heart anchored self. We're earthbound because we're human. We live on this earth, right? And in that grounded place of living in this earth, we're supposed to be grounded in our body and heart anchored, heart centered, feeling safe.
Mm. Yeah.
Right. And so that my 30 years has brought me to that place as the starting place, starting at that root. Often I spent my life looking in the branches for what was in the root.
Mm.
Right. And I was healing all the stuff in the branches, my daddy issues, my rejection, all the branches, and it like drove me down into the root. And so I learned like the first things I have to work on for myself, and this is where I'm finding my work in service, is developing a felt sense of safety. Right. How do we curate that? How do we cultivate and nourish that? Because that's a body visceral sensation. And then putting the language to it gives it structure and makes it real for us. And then we can kind of carry it with us and really show up as authentically as we can in that moment and with confidence. It's a very courageous walk, this spiral of growth, because it's vulnerable and it takes courage. And then from safety to belonging. So those I have found are the building blocks.
Yeah.
I want to ask you, can I ask a question to Jude?
Yeah.
I want to ask you how you do that, because I think that that's what we're trying to get at in the meat of this episode is what are, like you say, exactly the process that I'm using too, but I would love to hear how you actually get at that with your community.
Okay. So one thing is lexicon, language, and you have your own, and it's absolutely beautiful and rich. And I love to sit and listen to you, because even though the language is different, it resonates in my body. It's true, and it's powerful and potent. So, having that lexicon being clear and then being able to communicate it and embodying the truth of it, so that, because without the embodiment, we can only impart what we're embodying, right? So, and that's where each time we kind of level up, we can impart more. And so language, and is because they have to, so I've been looking at trauma energetically. And so we have to get, the language is the framework out. It's kind of the map, right? And so once they begin to understand and comprehend the language, not just up here, but able to integrate it and then differentiate. Right. Okay. So for me, it's the trauma bound identity and the earth bound identity. So once they're able to begin to differentiate between the two, they can start to move themselves into their earth bound, heart centered, heart anchored self a little easier. And they'll start to recognize it more and more. Once they have that aha, like, oh, that's the trauma. This is me. Right. That's basically it. Right. And they can make that journey and it becomes more and more clear. And then I talk about and help them work with developing that felt sense of safety. For me, that's the starting point. So it's helping them bring awareness to any moment they feel safe. And if they, right. And usually I'm like, what you can do is start with a gratitude practice. And each time you start it is, I'm thankful because in this moment I am safe right here, right now. I'm able to talk about this. I'm able to be right here. I can breathe and safe. And then really explore, and this has come to me through the shamanic work, is what does it feel like? What does it smell like? What does it taste like? What are sensations to my body? Where do I feel that? Right? It's very somatic. Where am I experiencing that? And the more we can put words to the experience, we begin to make connection with safety. And then the more we bring awareness, right? The chi, the energy, the awareness, and noticing our safety, our felt sense, the more and more we feel safe.
Yes.
We're building new pathways of safety. We're reconnecting. We're bringing our connection to safety back online. It was offline. We're bringing it back online.
Yeah.
And then we practice it. It's a practice, right?
Yeah.
And that's how. Does that make sense? Like, okay.
Yeah. No, that's
that's the work I'm doing.
It is so perfect, and I love how clear you are about the way that you speak to it too, because I do think it's so disorienting to be in trauma. And so when you have somebody that's very clear that can sit with you through the process and show you like where you're going through the process, then in hindsight you can go, oh, I went through that. But when you're in it, it gets really convoluted. So I think building language around it, and there's identifiers of where do I feel safe? What does it feel like to be safe? oh, this is what it feels like to be safe. And let
Yeah.
me give some language around that and let me feel into that sense and notice it. That is
Mhm.
beautiful. Absolutely.
Well, and I want to say for me, and I have a hunch that's the same for each of you, that once I connected to that felt sense of safety, the ripple effect that went out in my life, I know it goes forward for sure, but it actually went back because then I could see, right? The trauma was that buffer that was keeping me from seeing, oh, I was actually always safe, pretty
Mm-hmm.
much, right? Like there were moments,
Well,
but in
Mm,
general, I was safe.
yeah,
And so it like rippled back and in many ways healed my past,
love that. Oh, I love that. Yes.
right?
yeah,
So I could
power.
reclaim things
Mm-hmm.
that I
Yes,
thought were lost, but really they were there.
right.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
And I
that's
think taking
power.
that child too and picking her up and showing her that she's
Yeah.
actually okay and you've always had her back, you know, even through
Yes.
things that had happened that had caused the trauma, you would never abandon her. And I know that that was some of the language that you
Yeah.
used before, and I won't abandon myself again because it does
Yeah.
feel like a disconnect, but you are always whole, you were always healed, we are always
Yes.
healing, our bodies are always healing. And I wanted to
Yeah.
kind of reference that scar tissue idea that you were talking about with Gabor Mate's definition of trauma. If
Mhm,
I mean, I get the luxury of working with people's beautiful bodies. And what I notice is this deep vein of scar tissue through many traumas, surgeries, or even just the emotional ties and binds that we have in our
Yeah.
body from constricting our bodies and holding them in positions of locking ourselves down because we have trauma. And so, what's really interesting is our bodies will build fascial lines, this scar
Yeah.
tissue, to hold us and anchor us into these positions that are defensive. They're like, oh, I
Mhm.
got to brace for anything that's coming at me. And what's really beautiful is when you start to see that opening, that like, oh, there's a flourishing that happens through the healing. That is the healing process to allow the flow of things to move through again. And it is about noticing. Most of us don't notice that we're just like locked up, our bodies are not well, we have
mhm.
dis-ease, right? All of these things. And not until we have some epiphany, or maybe it was like July 7th or whatever it was, where we got the awakening to go, oh, there was something that needs to come through. And holding space for that and going, okay, well, what does it look like to move the body? I think that's why movement is so important. So
Yeah.
noticing movement in whatever way feels actually applicable. And I think the big word here for me is appropriate, because not everybody can move in the same way. And so some people don't like yoga, some people don't like, can't even walk, you know. But what does moving look like for you so that you can start untying those binds and then starting to free the mind a bit? And so these are really beautiful concepts of like moving through the trauma and the how to's, but they're very unique and individual to each person. And I think that also needs to be spoken to too with practitioners. When you find a practitioner, be very, very sensitive to if you're aligned or not. If you're not, get the heck out. I always tell my patients if
Yeah.
they are not aligned or they don't feel resonant here, the door's right there. My key is that you feel safe here. And if you don't, or if I'm doing anything that feels unsafe, I need to know, or you can walk out. I will not hold it against you. It's always an option. And so having that freedom at the very front is really important. And freedom in your body, you know, freedom
Mhm.
to, oh, I can actually move. Because some people literally get locked down in their body so much that they feel like they have to sit and take what other practitioners that they put on this higher pedestal above them. Oh, I
Mm,
have to do what they tell me. I have to take these medications. I have to do it the way that they told me. A lot of them get caught up in the gauntlet of the medical system and the insurance system and all of these things, and basically get dismissed and told that they're not. It's all in their head.
yeah,
But that there's a power there when I'm like, yes, it is in your head and it's in your body and it's a part of your being, and you're that powerful. Like if it can be made, it can also be undone. That is how powerful you are. And
mm,
so trying to bring some light to that so that they don't feel ashamed for having the feelings and the sensations that they do have and that they carry with them is really important part of the process as well.
that's beautiful. Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah.
This is
I
right.
love it.
Yeah,
Well, and I want to point out because people that are watching or listening may not know this, but what Tara does in that introduction with her patients is a trauma-informed practice by giving them choice, which
Mm-hmm.
empowers them, right? Because often with trauma, we are deferring pieces of ourselves and part of our power. And in our culture, we are taught to revere anyone in the medicine practice, right? And so
Mhm.
by giving that choice, like right up front, she's empowering them. And that is a trauma-informed practice, and that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Choice is huge too. So that's another really good
Choice.
tool. Like you always have a choice. I think
Mhm.
giving that, offering that, because some people don't think they do. Like I really don't think they do. Offering that as another like tool or toy in the box is another
Yes.
really and so you get to choose to engage with the feelings, the thoughts in your mind. You might not feel
Yeah.
like a choice. You might be like, no, this is just on me. How do we choose? How do we
Right.
step in the space of that prefrontal cortex, which actually overrides the limbic system in the reptilian kind of brain, where we
Yeah.
feel like uh, captured, and say, oh, I can choose a different way. Oh, well, that's where these practices start to become awareness, become breath work, become acknowledgement. And that big piece of you get to choose is huge. So thanks for giving that as a pointer. I think that's a big one.
I'm remembering my aha moment around choice. I want to say it was like 20, like 17, 18, and I had a thing to go to that I was like, I need to go. It's the right thing to do for, So I was at a place where I was making some choices. But I was like, I don't know once I'm there if I get stuck. Da, da. And my friend looked at me and was like, well, you could just leave. And I was like,
Really, you could.
I can just
Yes.
leave. But like, it was like one of these, I was just stepping into choice and into my power and was like, oh my gosh, I can give myself permission to
Yeah.
leave. That's another choice I can add to my box, right? Like I can leave. I never have to stay somewhere where I'm uncomfortable and I don't want to.
Well, here's a good practical tool for maybe like if you just noticed today, right? With bringing that
Yeah.
awareness of how often in a day do you feel like have you don't have a choice and you have
Yeah.
to do the thing that you're doing? And can you actually flex that muscle, exercise the opportunity to choose differently and start to
Yeah.
build up to a practice on a regular basis? Oh, I can choose something different than what I'm doing that makes me uncomfortable.
And that's why it takes so much courage, right?
Mm,
Because we are in these patterns for a reason. We feel weirdly safe there, but we don't feel safe, right? We're not having a felt sense of safety in our body, which is a different thing. It's a survival mechanism,
yeah.
Right.
right? I'm surviving. I'm surviving. This is all
Yeah.
right. I'm surviving. I'm coping.
Yeah.
And right. And
Mm-hmm.
so it takes a lot of courage to make the different choice, the one that we haven't been making.
Yeah.
And we
And
will feel not safe,
beyond, yes.
maybe for a
I mean,
moment, but that's a good,
you're stretching beyond those fascial binds, those mental
yeah,
constructs, those ideas. And it's, I mean, when you move through discomfort, I mean, you guys know this.
it's
When you're
true.
sore and you're trying to stretch out something and you're like, oh my gosh, I've just been in that position for so long and it
Yeah.
aches and it hurts. It can feel like physical pain in the body when you're doing even just the psycho emotional work. And it
Uh-huh.
is going to be work. And that's
Yes.
why movement, even in those mental constructs, is so important. It's
Mhm.
we will continue to lay down those fascial binds. We'll continue to lay down those mental constructs in the
Yeah.
same pattern that will keep us so isolated and so small for so long. It can almost feel impossible to move beyond that. And
Yeah.
these are the tools to kind of start finding small ways to, it's not comfortable, but move beyond your comfort zone.
Very, very good.
I'm going to reference Alice really quick. I love Alice in Wonderland, and she will do, was it six impossible things before breakfast?
Oh, yes.
And one of the things that was said to her is, that she wasn't the Alice from before. She had lost her muchness, and trauma will have you lose your muchness.
Mm,
And, as we move through that discomfort, we get all that and more back.
love
Mm-hmm.
that. Love
And
Yeah.
we
that.
find ourselves doing all these things that we felt like were impossible, like going to Korea and
Yes.
moving and
Mm-hmm.
creating and living a different, the life that maybe you thought about, but we're not living out here. So yeah, that's it. I'm
I love
complete.
Wow.
it.
It's wonderful, you guys. Tara, I just want to ask you, in addition to what Jude has shared in terms of tools, and some of the things that you shared, is there anything else that comes to mind for you, for the listeners in terms of ways in which to heal trauma that we haven't discussed? Anything else come up?
Yeah, actually, well, so practical applications that I have a bit of a process, right? So appreciate the
Mm.
process. And my process, I'm actually starting to integrate another tool which I used to practice, but I'm now overlaying this kind of experience of doing it again. Like, oh, I can do this again in a different way with the knowledge and the wisdom that I have now. And that is meditation.
Mhm.
I have not like actively been meditating for years now, but I'm starting to notice in the trauma world, which is called glimmers, these moments of like deep peace and like feeling in like my body, that I'm like, okay, and everything's beautiful and I'm here experiencing it. And it was funny because I had just gone on a walk by myself. I do what you do too, Joe, which is busy myself to distract myself from whatever's going on here, and
Mhm.
pretend like I'm so busy. So
Right.
I went for a walk by myself and I was like, I'm not taking my phone. I'm just going to go and feel what it feels like to be on a walking meditation. I'm going to go breathe. I'm going to go embrace fall, which is difficult for me, and really feel the sensations of what's coming through. And on this walk, get in my head, do. Oh, wait, the practice is to come in back and, oh, I gained my awareness again. Ooh, I'm feeling the coolness on my skin. I'm feeling the sun on my face. I'm feeling the sounds and the birds are chirping and the rustling of the leaves. And okay, beautiful. Okay, I'm back. And then woo woo, get trapped in my mind again and starts going off again. Walk for, and I'm like, I keep coming back and I'm like, whoa, I'm further along on this walk. And where the heck was I? And what was going on? And these are things and then I'm like, oh, nope, the practice is to congratulate myself for coming back to that awareness again. It
Mm.
is so easy to judge and go, oh, I'm not really good at this. And I think a lot of people can't do sitting meditation when they have so much energy in their bodies. So the walking meditation really helps me. On this walk, I was about halfway through, had repeated this process a few times. I got a glimmer. And it was this beautiful water reflection, and the water was just sparkling and moving in this particular way that it took my breath away. And I was like, I'm getting tingles again just thinking about it. I was like,
Mhm.
if this moment right now was all I needed to experience, just to know that I have a life and that I'm here to live and breathe and be in it, that is enough.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
it filled me up. And I'm like, every moment can be that if we actually just acknowledge that this is what we are granted. This is the gift. This is beautiful that we get to experience every single moment, but it is so difficult when you're feeling uncomfortable in your body and you have so much dis-ease in the moment of your mind and kind of jockeying between the two all the time. If you can step outside and get that objective perspective again, you allow the space and the time to actually do that. And so my new practice is actually to start doing meditation, but in every moment, being more mindful of being present it could be putting on my shoes, it could be brushing my hair. It can be like, what
Right.
does this feel like to be
Mhm.
here? That
Mm.
is my most powerful practice right now. So yeah, there's a
Yeah.
lot of beautiful practices. I love, like I said, that I get to also be with people on my table. I've been actually integrating a lot of rocking, and you would not
Mhm.
believe the release that happens from just that.
Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
actually was a practice for me to do less, because I was like, I can't keep just always doing. What does it feel like to just feel what the body does if I just give it a little bit of a nudge? And then just this watching this flow happen in the body with the nudge and letting the body unravel itself.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. And people love it. It is just like this deeply soothing, like being rocked by your mother kind of feeling. Whoa. I didn't know that this was possible. And it was in me doing less that I discovered how powerful that could be,
Yeah,
witnessing.
that's so cool.
Yeah.
That's right. One thing that I think was mentioned, but I think for listeners may think this is probably the first step in wanting to heal my trauma is to see a therapist, talk therapy.
Mm.
And I don't want to discount that because there are some great therapists out there. Yet I think you alluded to it earlier, Tara, that I guess my experience has been it's only gone so far. I mean,
Mhm.
and so can we talk about the benefits of talk therapy and
Yeah.
that being maybe a jumping off point? Because some of the things that you guys are sharing are so foreign. So like, when you said EFT, Jude, right? I'm always
Yeah.
empathy is my number one strength. So I'm like, there's people out there who don't know what EFT is, so emotional freedom technique, right? Tapping.
Mhm. Tapping.
Right? And
Yes.
so
Yeah.
it's so talk therapy. Does it have
Yeah.
its place in trauma? And yeah, what are your thoughts?
You want to go,
Who
Jude, or you
wants
want?
to go first? Sure, sure. I have received talk therapy before I realized I had trauma, and I have received talk therapy from a trauma-informed energetic psychologist
Ooh,
since I am aware that I had trauma. So there's a whole new realm of psychology that is
that's great.
springing up just for
Yes.
the listeners out there. And uh, talk therapy, the regular old-fashioned kind, is really great. And like I said, I think I referenced it could even be that person in a way could be your support pal, the person that you see once a week or once a month, right? And they're helping you set goals and supporting you in your journey. What I found is that it only went so far, like you said, Joe.
Mhm.
And because of the nature of trauma being it crosses all the boundaries of ourself, right? Like the mind, the spirit, the emotional, the body, and affecting the nervous system quite greatly, our energetic system. So if we're only doing talk therapy, it's here, right? We're only working on one area where trauma is a holistic issue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so really the modalities that are somatic in nature, like EFT, somatic work, and EMDR,
Mhm.
even healing modalities through if you have a dance therapist, because there are some that marry movement and their work are going to be more beneficial, in my opinion. Now, I'm not a therapist or a doctor, so it's just my opinion. And in my own experience, that is where I have had exponential growth or my growth sped up was in these modalities that crossed, that were not just talk therapy. And not to diminish the support that I gained from that or the insight, because they would ask me great questions that made me think about things, right? So there was good there. It just wasn't far reaching enough for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's that embodiment piece, right? And
Mhm.
so that, I think, like what you just said, and I do want to make sure that we let people know that there is a whole nother evolution of therapy coming through right now because of the awareness of trauma and how big and how vast it has become, like
Mhm.
in the awareness space. Not to say that there isn't practitioners out there still doing it kind of old guard, and I do see a lot of people getting hurt in different ways by it as well. And so I do want to say, if you do feel like you're not a good fit for your therapist, please don't feel like you owe it to them to be
Mhm.
there, and don't feel trapped. I mean, it's really important to go explore different practitioners and to see what's right for you.
Yeah.
Um, and that's the thing is, like, I do think it's really important to get curious as to what's going on in the body. If you could have, this is what I really love. I always ask my patients if they have a therapist while they're seeing me, and if they have a therapist that they like while they're seeing me. And a lot of the therapists that I notice that people are really getting a lot of transformation from is EMDR,
Mhm.
EFT, the guided visualization stuff, and
Yeah.
hypnotherapy is really huge too.
Mhm.
Biofeedback, really huge too.
Yes.
There's a lot of really cool stuff coming out right now, and I'm super
Mhm.
excited because I get to integrate a lot of the body work and the energetic work with the things that are happening on more of the, I would say, I guess it's more on the science level, but I guess what we do here is science too. So I'm always trying to bridge the science and the woo together.
Yeah,
Right.
I love
Me
it.
too.
I love it.
Science. I'm like, it is science.
Well, if you look at it, science is just proving the woo. It's just a very blunt instrument
That's
because
funny.
It's true.
we don't
This is
have the
true.
to really
Yeah.
measure how vast the woo is. It's very esoteric, and our Western minds have a really hard time with that Cartesian model kind of marrying these things.
Gosh, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, but there is a lot of really beautiful things that are coming forth now. And so I would really encourage people to get curious. That's another big strategy too, to get curious. That will throw down those defenses right away and that judgment right away. And if we get curious as to what's going on, instead of getting upset by it, we can go,
Yeah.
investigation. But carrying that curiosity into your practitioners and the kind of treatments you're receiving as well. One big limiting factor, I think, for a lot of people right now is money. Insurance companies have a big hold on the industry. And so if anybody ever feels motivated enough to go back to their insurance company and complain, do it. Because right now, practitioners just cannot be reimbursed the way that they need to be to do this kind of work. And we need to let them know. So if you have anything inside of you that's like, this is not right, go tell them. Go tell your insurance companies, we want to go do this work. How do we do this? How do we get it funded? Because it's really important at this point in time that we actually do that work so that we can move forward.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, that's really great.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's beautiful. Wow, just this has been once again a very rich discovery. You guys ain't playing around. Oh my gosh. And I think it's important because I know that each of us is probably in our own, spiral of growth, have experienced people that we meet. It could be online or through a referral or what have you. And they've been a beautiful stepping stone to the next spiral. I mean, the next level per se. So for those of you who are either listening or watching, I'm going to put contact information for both Jude and Tara. And whoever you're drawn to energetically or just something that you said, reach out to them, whether it be for information, to, work with them energetically or, energy work or somatic work. I mean, I trust them like no other. So
Thank you, Joe.
we're not here to put a commercial, yet at the same time, we want to honor what's come through us. So I know I wasn't going to do that, you guys, but I think it's important because I've been watching podcasts and I'm like, oh my gosh, I want more information from that person just because I connected, with them, etc. So yeah, this is what
I'm open. Yeah. I mean,
that's
the thing. We're just teachers of one another too. And so we're just here trying to show what's showing up on both sides so that we can identify that we're actually more the same than we're different. And I think building those bridges is so important. So I'm open to receiving all of that. If anybody has any questions, I'm open.
Yeah. Right. And then maybe what we'll do for the next episode, because we didn't talk about it, is the play of plant medicine.
Oh my God.
Okay.
So in that world, dude, totally.
And so that'll I'll be sure we'll start off with plant medicine in our next episode. And I'm going to invite those go in the comments and share things that you'd like us to cover or something that you have a specific question about, and we would love to explore it ourselves. So
that'd be great.
I was looking at time. I'm like, oh my gosh, we could.
I don't even know how that happened.
I love it. I absolutely love it. Thank you both. Just again for your service, your friendship, your sistership. Really, really appreciate how the universe is just tying us all together for the work that we are individually doing and then collectively as well. Once again, those who are watching, continue to provide feedback to me in this laboratory of exploring what's love got to do with this life that we're living. And I think we're bringing that to life. So with that being said, much love to everybody and see you next time. All right. See ya. Bye, everybody.